once again, Minnesota is flying, or maybe I should say rowing, under the radar entering the college football season. PJ Fleck always exceeds expectations with the Golden Gophers. He has quietly won 8 games or more in 3 of the last 4 seasons, and he absolutely has the team to do it again in 2025. A true sleeper in the Big Ten. Before we get into the roster for this upcoming season, let's look at what happened last year. Minnesota went 8-5, won their bowl game against Virginia Tech. Could have been a much different year for the Golden Gophers, right? 4 one-possession losses for them last year, losing a heartbreaker in week 1 by 2 points to North Carolina, losing to Michigan by 3, their late rally coming up just short, losing to Rutgers by 7, losing to Penn State by just 1 point. Imagine what the season could have been if they had won all 4 of those games. Imagine what it could have been if they just won half of those games. Could have been the hunt for the college football playoff, possibly. Instead, 7-5 regular season before winning their bowl to clinch an 8th win. Now you look at the roster coming into this year. They have the opportunity to get to 8 regular season wins, have an opportunity to be that sleeper team in the Big Ten. Relatively favorable schedule and a lot of talent. 7 starters back on the offensive side of the ball, but the big question for them is quarterback. They're going to be starting Drake Lindsey, a freshman, and he is expected to start. Great frame, 6'5", pretty not heavy set, but some good weight on him. Strong arm, very high football IQ. PJ Fleck even quoted as saying, "This guy is playing at a higher level than any freshman I've ever had." It's pretty impressive, pretty high praise from the head coach. So a lot of hype surrounding Drake Lindsey, and Minnesota's season will go as he goes. They've got Darius Taylor, though, also returning. The star running back rushed for nearly 1,000 yards last year, 10 touchdowns. He does return. They do lose their top 2 pass catchers, but went out and added Logan Loya from UCLA, has over 1,200 reception yards in his last 3 seasons with the Bruins. Also add Javon Tracy from Miami, Ohio, over 1,100 reception yards in the last 2 years with the Redhawks. Very strong offensive line. I expect all the offensive numbers to go up for Minnesota after averaging just 26 points per game last year. This is a sneaky offense to watch. Do not sleep on them. The defense, if you've watched Minnesota football over these last few years, you know they're always really good. Their defense is always really good. Last year was no exception. They allowed just 16.9 points per game. 286 yards per game, was 5th in the nation. Only gave up 176 passing yards per game. That was good for 10th in the nation. So a very, very good defense last year. And now they returned 6 starters from that side of the ball, including 3 of their top 5 tacklers. That includes a guy like Skoy Parrish, who comes in with 5 interceptions from last year. The secondary is going to be very, very strong in 2025. The defensive line looking to be pretty solid. You've got Jalen Logan Redding and Devin Eastern back up front. The linebacking core has got Devin Williams and Maverick Baranowski, who was the second leading tackler on the team last year. This Minnesota team's got talent everywhere, both on offense and on defense. They've got a pretty dang good schedule to go with it. Let's see how they're going to do. Tell you right now, I think they start 3-0. Like that, Golden Gophers are off to a fast start. The only tough game in those first 3 weeks is on the road at California. It's a pretty big road trip, sure. Power team, sure. But remember, the Golden Bears lose a lot. They lose their quarterback. They lose all of their top rushers. They lose all but 1 of their top pass catchers. And they lose 6 of their top 7 tacklers. They are devoid of a lot of talent. Going to have a lot of key new pieces and faces. Not sure that can all come together against a more veteran squad in Minnesota. So Minnesota does go on the road, gets this win, 3-0. Coming out of the bye week, they're 4-0. Because I think they do beat Rutgers. It's big that this game is at home for Minnesota. They were kind of upset a little bit on the road last year, losing 26-19 to the Scarlet Knights, allowing 349 yards of offense. Not their best defensive performance. But now they're back at home, off a week of rest, facing a Rutgers team that I really think is going to be better than their final record shows. But I think this Minnesota defense is going to try to force Ethan Kaliakmanis to win the game solely through the air. And if he has not improved as much over the offseason as a passer, he's not going to be able to deliver. So I think the Minnesota defense shows up big. I think Rutgers struggles a little bit to slow down the Minnesota run game. And the Golden Gophers are 4-0 and 1-0 in conference play. If this goes the way we think it will, it could set up an unbeaten showdown on the road at Ohio State in the first weekend of October. So that'll be an interesting storyline to watch. Potentially 4-0 Minnesota, potentially 4 or 5-0 Ohio State. Who knows what what could hold here? Who knows what will happen in Columbus, right? Maybe Minnesota gives them a better fight than we think. That could be the case, but even if they do, they're not going to win, right? Not many teams can just stroll up into Columbus and walk away with a victory. Some teams can. Minnesota, I don't believe, can. They're not quite there yet. So they will lose to the Buckeyes, who, yes, lose a handful of key pieces from last year's national championship squad, but will still be one of the best teams in the country. So at 4-1, they come back home. Great bounce-back game, getting to play Purdue. Should be a cakewalk as the Boilermakers are going through another rebuilding process, this time with Barry Odom as their head coach. So Minnesota, halfway through the year, is 5-1. You couldn't ask for anything better. 5-1, and your lone loss is on the road to Ohio State, which is very understandable. You're talking about the Golden Gophers maybe being a Big Ten title contender, maybe being a playoff contender, if things can continue to go their way. And for now, I think they will, because I think they'll beat Nebraska the very next week. Getting the Cornhuskers at home is big, 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 big. Minnesota has won 5 straight games against Nebraska, and as of this day, as of October 18th, that will be Nebraska's toughest road game. Not saying that it will be for the entire season, but Nebraska's got a pretty cush schedule for the most part up until October 18th. They've got a lot of home games. I think their only other road game prior to that is Maryland, if I'm not mistaken. Not the most difficult place to play. Minnesota, pretty underrated place to play. I think this defense and this crowd rattled Dylan Raiola. I think they can force him into a handful of mistakes. He wasn't the best with his decision-making at times last year. I think he improves. Not enough against this high-quality team in Minnesota. Relatively low-scoring game. Both teams do have a strong defense, but Minnesota should own the defensive advantage. They should be able to control the clock with their offensive line and strong running game. Factor in home field advantage. They get the job done. This team is 6-1 heading into the road game at Iowa. Start taking Minnesota for real here. Go on the road to Iowa. This is not good if you're a Golden Gopher fan. They do not play well against the Hawkeyes. 2-11 against Iowa in the last 13 meetings, and really you could argue should be 1-12 had it not been for that controversial finish just a few years ago where they said Iowa called for a fair catch, even though some say he didn't. They could be 1-12, right? Regardless, Iowa has their number, and I have a really hard time picking Minnesota to beat the Hawkeyes, especially on the road at Kinnick Stadium, which, as we know, is a very difficult place to play. I don't think Iowa's going to be that great of a team this year. I think they've still got a lot of questions offensively. Defensively, they might not be as strong as they've been in years past, but they do have enough to beat Minnesota. Sometimes in games like this, yes, it is who has the better talent. Yes, it is who has the better team, but sometimes it is a mind game as well. And Iowa does own the mental advantage over Minnesota, considering how much they've dominated this series as of late. Factor in, again, the home crowd. Hawkeyes get the win, 6-2 for Minnesota, but they beat Michigan State with ease to be 7-2 heading into their bye week. 3 games left in the season. Not too bad, guys. 7-2, a fantastic record. Only losses both on the road to Ohio State and Iowa. While some might be dreaming of a playoff berth that they can find a way to win out, I think those hopes of the playoff will completely be vanished when they lose to Oregon. Not an ideal spot, right? Coming out of the bye week, you got to go on the road to Eugene for the first ever trip to Oregon. The Ducks are just too good. Yes, they're going to lose a handful of key players from last year. Yes, they've got a handful of questions, and we'll touch more on the Ducks later. But regardless, this team is still very, very solid. They've got the head coaching advantage with Dan Lanning. They got home field advantage. I just don't see Minnesota having enough to win this game there. So they're 7-3. Their playoff hopes are done. Still have a quest to go to a decent bowl game, though, but they run into a major trap game on the road at Northwestern. A trap game that I think they will lose. Now, all right, I know all you Minnesota fans out there are going to be livid with that one. No, there's no way. No way we beat a team like Rutgers or California or Nebraska and lose to Northwestern. All right, let me ask you something. Have you studied Northwestern? We're about to go into that. Number 2, true or false? PJ Fleck always loses a game that he shouldn't. So let's go in through this. Number 1, you've got the Oregon hangover. So a very tough game on the road against Oregon. Maybe a little hungover from that. Now you have to go on the road to Evanston. Not ideal there. Northwestern's got a decent squad this year. I'm not saying they're going to go bowling. I'm not saying they're league contender, but Preston Stone comes in. Competent quarterback play, solid running game, and a very underrated defense with a lot of talent coming back. 8 starters back on that side of the ball, and it's senior day for the Wildcats. And then finally, we said PJ Fleck always loses a game that he shouldn't. Let's go through the list, shall we? Last year, the game they shouldn't have lost was Rutgers. On the road at Rutgers, they were 6.5-point favorites. They lost that game. 2023, on the road at Northwestern. They should not have lost that game, but they did as 11-point favorites. 2022, it was a home game against Purdue as 9.5-point favorites. They lose that game. They were also 4-0 and ranked at the time. A lot of momentum. They lay a massive egg at home. 2021, 31-point favorites against Bowling Green, and Minnesota loses that game. 2020, they were 20.5-point favorites against Maryland, and they lost that game. PJ Fleck has a track record of losing at least one game per year that he shouldn't, and this year it will be at the end of the season on the road at Northwestern. The Golden Gophers dropped to 7-4, but do bounce back. I'm sure you're going to love that. Do bounce back with a win against Wisconsin. Senior day for Minnesota. Rivalry game against the Badgers. This is a wild series where Minnesota lost 14 straight games to Wisconsin from 2004 to 2017, but have since won 4 of their last 7, including a 24-7 win last year. Minnesota owns every edge in this game. They've got the better offense. They've got the better defense. They've got home field advantage. They're going to finally wake up, as they've done plenty of times before when they lose that game they shouldn't. The season doesn't get completely derailed. They do bounce back, and they do so in a big way against their rival to clinch an 8-win regular season. 8-4 for Minnesota in 2025, which to me is a pretty dang good year. Not enough people are talking about Minnesota. They're flying under the radar, or as we said, rowing under the radar. I think this is a perfect setup. They're not going to beat Ohio State. I really don't think they're going to beat Iowa. I don't think they're going to beat Oregon. So best case scenario, 9-3, maybe 8-4 is generous. Maybe so. You could argue they lose to Rutgers. You could argue they lose to Nebraska. You could argue they lose to Wisconsin. Some toss-up games there where I do believe Minnesota comes through and wins those games, giving them the benefit of the doubt. Going to go with 8-4, 9-3, best case scenario. But regardless, another 8-win season. This will be the 4th time in the last 5 years that PJ Fleck has won at least 8 games at Minnesota. A pretty dang good record, pretty dang good track record, and great consistency from the head coach. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to our expert picks. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country. You do not want to miss out on that, as well as our weekly newsletters. Do not miss out on that either. Tons of exclusive content coming your way straight from thegridironexpert.com. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.